Bada boom, live and in color, episode 6 of Around the Cage. A little bit of a different feel with this episode because I will share to those listening that everyone on this episode, every panelist that has been so kind enough to join me tonight, was not who I expected 24 hours ago. But this train keeps rolling. Hi, everybody. My name is Davidson Baker, not staff writer anymore, but contributor now for Fansided MMA, MyMMAnews.com. Thank you so much for joining me. All four of these guys, like I said, stepped up. They are the company man in the equivalence of this conversation, and these four men have all been here before. They know how to go, and we will introduce them as such. Keith Schillen, contributor, Fansided, and Sherdog, amongst others. Keith, how are we?
Good. How you doing today, man?
I'm doing good, man. I'm doing good. Craig Allen.
You forgot to announce me as previous champion.
Previous champion.
Because it was the first episode. Technically, I think I came in third, but we all knew that was the first episode, so you didn't really know how to judge correctly because it was the first episode. So really, I'm the previous champion.
Got it. Okay. Previous interim champion, Keith Schillen. Craig Allen, Fight Night Picks. Craig, what's up, man?
Man, Nolan and Sinisic beat me in the last one, so I'm coming for you, Nolan.
And speaking of Nolan, he's with us tonight also from Flow Combat and Tapology. Nolan King. Nolan, how are you?
I'm doing well, man. I have to say I'm trying to start like the message. I'm trying to promote the message of unity tonight because I believe that there are 4 Red Sox fans in this group right now.
Yeah.
So we're all champions, aren't we?
I believe so. That's a great point. And said Red Sox fan to round out the group is the one and only a former champion of this show, Mike Hack of MyMMAnews.com. Mike, what's up, man?
An actual former champion of Around the Cage in the building. And I believe the word hero is defined as a person who is admired for courage, outstanding achievements, or noble qualities. And I feel like we all fit that mold right now. So this is the Heroes episode, and it should be titled as such. Wow, when it comes out on iTunes.
Heroes episode.
I think Craig and Nolan should be docked a point just to start because they lost to Elvis Sinisic, and there's not many people in the world of MMA can say they lost to Elvis Sinisic. So those two guys should start off with a point.
All right. Well, these guys are pretty familiar with how things go around here, but for those listening that might be checking us out for the first time, a quick rundown of how things will work. And such. The panelists are rewarded points not by whether I agree with what they say, but rather how they back up their arguments. There will be 4 questions asked in the first round before we say sayonara to one individual. Another question asked before we say goodbye to another. And then for the final question, we will reset the points and do a final showdown where they do not know the question that is getting ready to be asked of them. Is everybody in here ready to go?
Let's do it.
Yeah.
Sweet. And we start with a little bit of a curveball thrown today. Brett Okamoto of ESPN.com reporting earlier today that the UFC 236 pay-per-view offering does indeed have its main event, and it is for one of those very coveted and revered interim titles. Israel Adesanya and Kelvin Gastelum seem to be heading in the direction for the main event of UFC 236. Keith, I'll start with you. Is the need for an interim title more so in effect for there not being a current and active middleweight champion, or more so that they just needed to find a dadgum headliner for that card?
I don't think it's needed. I don't think any interim title is needed because at the end of the day, the hardcore fans don't care about interim titles. The casual fans don't care. The casual fans don't know the difference between weight classes and titles. They just know the big names. And hardcore fans, we don't care. I mean, if is anybody here who wouldn't watch the fight if it wasn't for an interim title? So yeah, I don't think that really matters. It's just a good fight. It's between 2 great fighters in a good weight class near the top of the weight class. With Whitaker out, you kind of have to make it. I think it's a great stylistic matchup. You got 2 pressure counter strikers going at it. Obviously, Gastelum has a little bit more in the wrestling department, and Adesanya is a lot more decorated. However, if you saw a tweet today or a I think it was Instagram post by Donald Cerrone. This might not be the headliner. We could see Conor McGregor versus Donald Cerrone in the main event. And how great would that be? That would be a marketing. It'd be perfection for the UFC because Cerrone and McGregor would bring in the eyes, and then Adesanya obviously has that star potential. Having him under Conor McGregor and make him a big star, and then if something happened, Cerrone would probably fight both matchups anyways in the same night. So,
Nolan.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a great fight. I don't know what other fight you would be able to make at 185 pounds that would have this magnitude at this moment. Like Keith said, I don't think that it's necessarily set in stone as being a main event at this point. It seems like that's kind of up in the air. And, if it's not going to be a main event, this was the way that they, the only thing that they could do to make this fight 5 rounds. So I'm not complaining. At worst, we're getting 2 extra rounds of, or at best, we're getting 2 extra rounds of Adesanya versus Gastelum, which is a phenomenal fight. I think it's got the intrigue. Pair it with another big main event, and you've got yourself a very promotable 1-2 punch. If they can put a fight on there that's bigger than that one, it's phenomenal. And I think especially with the way that things transpired at UFC 234, Israel Adesanya on the mic told Gastelum to put his belt down. There's already a little bit of back and forth there. It's a fight that people have already been thinking about. So, hey, I'm all for it. Let's do it.
Craig.
I mean, currently right now, your complement to this fight is Boston Salmon and Khalid Taha. So unless that's going to be your co-main, we need something else. We need another big fight. It was already mentioned. I mean, a Cerrone and McGregor fight would definitely do wonders for it. Whether or not that's a main or co-main remains to be seen. But there were a lot of questions this weekend with the pass card, the big ESPN push up here in Canada, still on TSN. But what are we going to have for 236? The excitement level's already there for 235. We've seen big interviews with guys like Anthony Smith, among others, and everybody's excited for that. But we really got to start filling this one in. I think it makes sense. There's not really any other big fights that you can make at 185. Whether or not we need an interim title, that remains to be seen. But I think it's a good matchup. Stylistically, it's good. Gastelum's got the good ground game. He can box in close. And Adesanya's great at range. And both guys can talk, too. And we've kind of seen a bit of a bad boy Gastelum lately. So I'm looking forward to it.
And Mike.
I mean, like the other gentleman said, it may be the main event. It may not be the main event. I mean, everything that I'm hearing and everything that's being reported right now is that this card – there's 2 options as far as location goes. One is Abu Dhabi. If it is in Abu Dhabi, I fully expect Israel Adesanya versus Kelvin Gastelum to be the main event. The other option is MSG. And if it is MSG, there's no way they're not going to put everything on the line to get Conor versus Cerrone to headline that event. You don't need to have a title attached to that. Just having Conor against anybody is enough to headline that card, sell that arena out, and get a bunch of pay-per-view buys. So whether it's a main event or not, we don't know. Does it make sense for 185 pounds? 100% it does. I mean, what else can you do right now? Robert Whittaker, we don't know when he's coming back. And even if you want to strip him of the title at this point, just not to be a negative Nancy, but just to kind of have the division move forward and have Whittaker just fight the winner to kind of up the stakes a little bit. You could do that as well. I don't think anyone's really going to have a problem with that, even though Robert Whittaker is maybe the most underrated champion in the UFC right now. So I'm cool with whatever it goes. I think location is going to determine whether this fight is the main event or not, but I love the fight. I think everyone has been very positive in terms of how social media has reacted to the fight. So I'm all for it. It's great. And, we'll see if it's the main event or not, but we'll see where the actual location of the event takes place. I think that'll determine it all.
Okay. Very interesting points made by you guys. Craig with 8, the other 3 with 7. And we move on to round 2. Question number 2. In retrospect, we look back at this weekend going into it, and it had a whole lot of action to provide. You had 2 Bellator cards, a UFC, ESPN curtain jerker, for lack of a better word, as well as Invicta and Cage Fury Fighting Championships, and so on and so forth. Main events did not deliver the amount of excitement fans were looking for, according to some. With injuries happening on Friday night to Sergey Karatanov, of course Sunday night to Cain Velasquez. So I will go ahead and kind of reverse it a little bit. Start with Mike on this one. In retrospect, did this weekend as a whole disappoint you as a fan, given all the great fights that and the hype surrounding those fights, surrounding them coming in?
I mean, you could talk about it with the fights, but as soon as you saw Keith on television, it changed everything. It made everything a lot better. Keith's eyes was more important than Francis Ngannou knocking out Cain Velasquez in 26 seconds. So, that's the way I look at it. No, I mean, I thought Friday night's event was really good. At least the prelims are fantastic. Those who got to tune into those, they were great. John Duma beating Mike Kimball was fantastic. I thought Logan Storley was fantastic as well. A lot of people kind of poo-pooed that fight, but that's just the way fans react. I mean, I thought the Phoenix crowd sucked worse than any other crowd that I've seen in MMA in a long time. But, obviously some unfortunate endings to the fight with Mitrione on Friday night. Obviously, that wasn't the game plan. Obviously, Mitrione didn't plan for 8 to 10 weeks saying, like, you know what, I'm going to throw this ferocious kick at the nuts and hope it lands, and then I can have a quick day at work. I'm sure that's not what he planned. It was an unfortunate situation. Saturday night's fight with MVP and Daly, I mean, I thought Paul Daly's game plan was the best he's ever had. I thought it was very smart. It didn't make for a aesthetically pleasing fight, but I thought the game plan was perfect. MVP got to, kind of mix in some different things that he wasn't prepared for, and we showed the kind of depth in his game. And then I thought Francis Ngannou made a big statement, and I don't think he's getting the credit he deserves. Some people say it's just the knee buckling. I thought for sure, watching the video a million times, that it was the short uppercut that buckled the knee to begin with. So I think Francis Ngannou is probably, the way that fans reacted to him is probably the most disappointing thing of the entire weekend, at least in my opinion.
You're on mute, brother.
Ah, man. Keith. I knew it would be me first.
Oh boy.
Keith, we can go to you if you're ready.
All right. Yeah, that was. I mean, yeah, I think it definitely. If the highlight of the weekend is seeing me on TV, then it's a terrible weekend for MMA fans. I mean, you figure you got the main event of Friday night's Bellator ends in 15 seconds from a nut shot. You got Invicta girl, Vanessa Porto got her eye poked out, cut open. Cage Warriors, you had a broken leg. The main event of 216 is two British strikers. Been one of the biggest rivalries in Bellator history, biggest rivalry in British combat sports history. Blah blah blah. And then they wrestle, and it's a terrible, ugly wrestling match. And then ESPN, we've been waiting 25 years to be on the worldwide leader in sports, and then the fight ends in 26 seconds. It's not a brutal knockout. It's a somewhat knockout with a leg getting bent back, a guy screaming in pain. It was a terrible moment. It was a terrible weekend for MMA. And then if you even let's go deeper. Let's look at like the rest of the main card fights. I mean, Storley, dry humping Pascal for 15 minutes was terrible. The Dantes Mishek fight was terrible. Minakov and Congo, controversial decision. It was boring. Congo was running away. Minakov was swinging at air. And then you got Cro Cop and Nelson. The most exciting thing about Cro Cop and Nelson was seeing Nelson get taken out by police afterwards. It's a terrible weekend.
Craig.
Man, I was so fired up for this weekend. Had the live event companion on Friday night for Mitrione Kharitonov. I mean, we were super stoked for this fight. Big Kharitonov fans, love watching him fight. I get so excited to see him, 2 fights ago in M1, and then he gets poked in the eye, and that's the end of that fight. And then in this fight, he gets the old hemorrhoid. The weirdest part of that, the referee reaching down the shorts, that was a little bit too personal for me. That was kind of strange, I thought. But other than that, I really enjoyed that card. Storley, really, really good. Austin Vanderford's got to be one of the biggest stories of the weekend. He did great against Cody Jones. The next card, yeah, I mean, it wasn't great. You had some decent performances. Justin Sumter was probably, performance of the night for me on that card, kind of coming back after getting dropped. The Cro Cop fight, I didn't think was all that good. It got all the headlines. A lot of people said, hey, Cro Cop with the head kick, look at how good he was. But if you actually had a chance to watch the fight, it wasn't all that great. The Congo Minakov fight wasn't good. And then as far as the ESPN card was concerned, Mike really hit it on the head there. I mean, the Ngannou uppercut, that was what ended the fight. Then Cain buckled. Then it was over. But I mean, if I could give that card a letter grade, it's a solid B. I thought it was pretty good. And the weekend as a whole, a B as well. And I mean, you can't go wrong with that.
Nolan.
Well, I agree with Keith, which makes me feel like I'm wrong. I half agree with Craig, and I disagree with Mike. I feel like with this weekend, if you were judging this as any other MMA weekend or whatever, that would be you have to take every weekend individually. In order to be disappointing, that means there has to be expectations, and the expectations for this past week were very high. I'm not going to grade this weekend on the same scale as if we had UFC Fight Night Buenos Aires. So the expectation, the bar was set so high just with the rivalry between MVP and Paul Daly, as well as the rest of the undercard in main card for that event was supposed to be, one of Bellator, one of their marquee moments, one of the biggest cards that they've had on DAZN, really pushing it. World, at least more than the UFC Phoenix was for sure. UFC Phoenix, I feel like was, like Craig said, it was a B. It was kind of what people were expecting. It wasn't bad. It was pretty good. But then the Bellator cards back to back, I mean, those were lacking. Those were way below expectations, in my opinion, when you think about what people were expecting. So to answer your question, yeah, it was disappointing just because the expectation bar was so high.
Hey, Nolan, what was the highlight of the weekend, though?
What was the highlight?
Yeah.
Hey, Garrett Davies recognized you. That's got to be your highlight of the weekend.
I think it's got to be your eyes.
No, it's got to be Vitaly Amosov.
Oh, yeah. Yaroslav Amosov.
Amosov, yeah. Sorry, I'm mixing up my Vitaly. Yeah, sorry, Yaroslav Amosov. Yeah.
Come on, Keith. Not all Russians are named Vitaly. Let's get rid of
that. And to bring things back to the Ngannou punch, I mean, I'll keep this question short and simple, man. I mean, it was that's been the did it happen or did it not question of the weekend per se. Is was it the short uppercut from close range that landed from Ngannou, or just the wear and tear overall on Cain Velasquez's body that caused his knee and body to become compromised in that moment in time? Nolan, I'll start with you. I mean, pretty simple. Was it the knee or was it the uppercut?
Well, I think it was both. I mean, the uppercut is the ultimate cause of the whole thing. I mean, he hurt Cain, he knocked him down, but Cain's knee clearly had an issue too. I mean, most guys, when they get hit in the head, they don't roll over and say, oh shit. That's not something that happens to people that get hurt. So in my opinion, people are having it be this or thing, but I think the uppercut caused the injury. It's an Ngannou, all the credit in the world to Ngannou. He did, there's no flukiness in this. I don't think they should run it back. I don't necessarily think it should be viewed as like, hey, 9 times out of 10, this wouldn't have happened because, it was in the first 20 seconds of the fight and he made a move that, it just contributed to Cain's ultimate demise. I said this to somebody on Twitter. I kind of look at it similarly to other injuries that we've seen. If somebody throws a leg kick and it breaks someone's leg, it's the person who threw the leg kick. It's their TKO. They did it. They threw a good strike. But if the other dude broke his leg too, he suffered an injury where he couldn't continue. I don't see that this is any different than that. It's just it's a weirder sequence where obviously he got hit in the head and then he hurt his knee. But it's a combination of the two. You can't point to one or the other. But I mean, the ultimate cause is Francis's uppercut.
Keith.
Yeah, I hate to do this, but me and Nolan are in agreement. To me, it's a combination of actually 3 things, and I can't believe nobody else is seeing this. Ngannou does land this little short uppercut, but if you see right afterwards, he lands an uppercut and he pushes Cain on his chest, and then Cain falls back, his knee buckles, and it rips. He screams out in pain. He's not screaming out from a punch. He's screaming out in pain from his knee. So I think it's a combination of all 3. And then if you see, there's a video of Cain at the open workouts where he buckles his knee in that. So I actually do believe that Cain came in injured. I mean, is that really that surprising to believe that Cain Velasquez came into a fight injured? I mean, he's missed a glass from Unbreakable. Before that, Ngannou defends a takedown, and you got to ask yourself, if Cain's knee is fully healthy, is he able to finish that takedown that he was in on, that Ngannou lifted him up off, and then he threw those 2 punches and then the uppercut? And then just because he landed an uppercut, does that mean that would have stopped the fight? Ngannou, he lands the uppercut, but Cain Velasquez never goes unconscious. He screams out in pain. At that point, he covers up because he knows he's all done, his knee's done. But if his knee doesn't buckle on him, is he able to grab a leg? Is he able to wrestle? If he falls, he's not that bad of a position, especially being a wrestler. So I don't want to take any credit for Nagano. It's a terrible moment, and to me in the sport, it's terrible that it wasn't so decisive one way or the other. If his knee just buckled out, then so be it. If it was a knockout that knocked him out, so be it. It kind of like it steals from Nagano and it steals from Kane. So it's terrible.
Mike.
I mean, I pretty much addressed this. I feel like Francis Ngannou isn't getting the credit he deserves from a lot of the casual fans. Not that he really cares about what the casual fans think, but I thought it was really interesting what he said on Ariel's show yesterday, that his game plan heading into the first round was to kind of test the waters, which I found very fascinating. Like normally, and a lot of people who analyze the fight said Ngannou's got to win it in the first 5 or 6 minutes. But Ngannou said his game plan was to see what Kane had in that first round. Was he going to try to wrestle him? Was he going to try to strike with him? He was going to try to, put his toes in the water and see whether it was warm or cold. And he was even surprised that the fight ended as quickly as it did. So I think he expected some of that to happen. Obviously, to land that short uppercut and to have the fight end the way that it did is not what he expected. But I thought his game plan, at least what he said with hindsight being 2020, was really fascinating, that he wasn't going in looking for the quick knockout. He was kind of testing the waters to see what Kane was going to bring after a 2 or so year layoff, and because he hasn't fought since UFC 200, so he wanted to see what it was going to be like. And it went the way it went the way that it went. So for Francis Ngannou, I don't know what happens next, but it is what it is. He got the win in 26 seconds. It's not a knee buckle. It's part of it, but like Nolan said, it was the short uppercut that led to that. So your hat has to go off to Francis Ngannou if you're really a serious fan of the sport, in my opinion.
Greg.
To me, it's a combination of a lot of factors, and I'm surprised, nobody brought this one up. But you look, and Keith had mentioned it, you look at the open workouts, did his knee buckle, what have you, and Mike brought up a good point too. I mean, Francis looked like he was going to kind of stay back a little bit. He kept his hands high, and he waited for Kane to kick, and that was the thing that really showed it to me that, well, maybe Kane's knee isn't all that bad, because he put some weight on it through 3 kicks, landed one of them, and then he went for the takedown. And Francis kind of, like you said, lifted him up. They kind of ended up against the cage, the short uppercut. And once the uppercut hit, you could see Kane go down and the knee buckled. So I think it is a combination of the uppercut. But I mean, 6 to 10 strikes and the fight was over in 26 seconds. To go back to our last topic, it's a huge disappointment for the casual fans. And now I think it kind of overshadows what Francis was able to do, because if it was, a 3-round war, didn't make it into the 4th or 5th rounds, and Francis finishes him and makes a big statement, maybe he does get a title shot. But now there's, talks that he fights the winner of JDS and Lewis. Does he fight Stipe? The DC conversation isn't really what's, the main focus. So that really takes away from it. But I think it's a good win for Francis. And for Kane, man, what's next? Like, do we see him back this year? Do we see him back ever? Who knows?
All right. Heading into the final question. Keith with 24. Greg with 23. Mike and Nolan with 22. And we head into the final question, and we surrounded looking ahead to this coming weekend. A pretty big fight at 205 pounds between the two men on the marquee for the first time ever in the Czech Republic, let alone Prague. That is where the MMA leader is heading this weekend. And this also a pretty simple question. And Mike, we'll start with you. With Anthony Smith and John Jones getting set to run that fight for the title at light heavyweight in about 10 or 11 days or so, is the winner of this weekend's main event between Jan Blachowicz and Thiago Santos up next?
No. I mean, I wish this was like a 10-second answer, but no, neither of those guys are next. I'm sorry. You got guys like Corey Anderson. You get a lot of interesting factors. Like if Daniel Cormier decides that he wants to drop to 205 pounds and fight John Jones, if he gets past Anthony Smith, guess what's happening, ladies and gentlemen? It doesn't matter who wins that fight. I don't think either of these guys are next. I just think it's just kind of where they are. And with there being so many cards, I just think like those are the 2 best guys available. I don't even think this is the most fascinating story of the night, in my opinion. Like one of the more fascinating stories for me is the co-main event. Like Stefan Struve hasn't won a fight since my son was still wearing diapers. It's been a long time since Stefan Struve's won a fight. He's got a big one coming up, and it's his last fight on his UFC contract. So, this guy, a lot of people looked at him because he was so tall and so big, like, what can happen? What is this guy's future? And sometimes he's had it on and sometimes he's had it off. And with everything on the line here, this is a huge fight for him. I think there's more significance for him than it is for either of the guys at 205 pounds of this opinion at this point. I think the best part about this card on Saturday is that we can watch the card and still go play golf on Saturday if we want to, if the weather's nice. So that's the way I look at it. Neither of these guys are getting a title shot. It certainly will put him in a step in the right direction, but that's about it as far as I'm concerned.
Nolan.
Yeah, I would agree with Mike for the most part. I think there's just, I'm going to say like 90% no, just because I think a lot of things would have to fall into place for one of these guys to fight for the belt next. I mean, I think that if Thiago Santos wins, he'll probably have a better shot of getting there right off the bat than if Jan wins. I mean, you have Dom Reyes in the, with a fight upcoming. If he gets a big win, he's got a big push behind him. I don't think Johnny Walker's necessarily there yet, but he's pretty close. If he were to beat Serkinov, I think he's somebody that will get thrown into the picture, kind of fast track. People will start talking about him because, hey, let's face it doesn't really take a lot in this division to as a new face, as a young guy to come up and you get a couple of wins and you're right in the picture. But I think just with Jones and Cormier, that whole dynamic, I think the fact that Jones is scheduled right now, that pushes it off even further, where these guys are going to have to cycle through at least once more to get that fight, even if they were to be the number one contender. So I'm going to say no. It would have to take some type of miracle, like if Anthony Smith, God forbid, got injured or something. I'm not going to – if that happens, I'll take full blame for it. But I just don't see that happening next. I think neither one of them, especially Blachowicz, aren't sexy enough names yet to be able to get that John Jones marquee.
Craig.
If Blachowicz wins, I think maybe he gets a rematch with Gustafsson. I mean, that was a decision loss for him. So that's a possibility there. If Santos wins, thinking logically, and I know, Anthony Smith kind of took exception to this, and I haven't said this yet, but I don't think he's going to win. And I think Thiago Santos and Anthony Smith is a pretty decent rematch. I think a lot of people can get behind that. Probably going to be a finish. You can sell that to casual fans, so that's not too bad. But Nolan brought it up. I mean, Dominic Reyes has got the fight with Oezdemir. If Reyes wins, maybe he gets a title shot. I don't think Oezdemir gets it with a win. I think he'd probably need another win there. And I think really the biggest narrative and the biggest storyline for this weekend is your Piotr Jan fight against John Dodson. That's the one that I'm looking forward to the most. I think it's going to overshadow the main event. I mean, it is great that we've got two of the top guys in the light heavyweight division, and we've seen a bit of a shakeup there lately. But to answer the question, yeah, I don't think the winner of this main event gets a title shot.
Keith.
All right, so it comes down to will and should and all that. And should they get the title fight? Yeah, I think they should. Will they? Who knows? We all know whatever fight makes the most money does. So it comes down to, I believe if John Jones wins, the UFC is probably going to try to push him to move up to heavyweight. If he decides he wants to stay at light heavyweight, I don't think DC's coming back down to light heavyweight. Makes no sense for him at this point. But if John Jones says he wants to stay at light heavyweight, there really isn't anybody to do it. And if you just kind of look, right now, out of all the people in the UFC rankings, oh my God, I can't even say his last name, Blachowicz, he's the highest ranked in the division of anybody. And you assume if Thiago Santos wins that fight, they move up. I mean, he would take that spot, and he would be the highest person in the weight class in the rankings. Another thing that you notice is that they're in a main event spot, so they're kind of getting a little bit of a promotional push. So, I mean, you put a guy in the main event, you probably want to use them in the future for something. I know the Dominic Reyes promotion, that people are trying to push that. The problem is, I mean, look at this fight right now against Oezdemir. It's on the prelims. So that kind of tells you that the UFC is not really into pushing him that much. And Corey Anderson, he's on a 3-fight win streak. If Blachowicz wins, he'll be on a 5-fight win streak. Thiago Santos would have won 8 out of 9 fights. I think the argument for them. And then God forbid Anthony Smith actually pulls up this miracle against John Jones. Who was the last guy to beat Anthony Smith? It was Thiago Santos. So you kind of have a backstory that way. So I guess I'll be the person all by himself in this answer. I say, yes, they will get the next shot against Anthony Smith when Anthony Smith pulls the upset and beats the GOAT.
You can tell Keith had the questions beforehand. He's been working on that answer for like at least 72 hours now.
He had a pencil. I saw the pencil in his hand.
No, I was actually writing notes as you guys were saying. I was writing stuff down. Listen, just because I'm better than you at this, no, don't hate.
Dominic Reyes and Volkan Ozdemir on the prelims in favor of that blockbuster matchup between Molly McCann and Priscilla Cash O'Hara. Gotta understand that. Keith 32, Craig 31, Mike 30, Nolan 29. Nolan coming in on short notice. I appreciate the candor, my friend. But we must say goodbye.
All right. Well, I appreciate you having me per usual, and I'm sure I'll be on again to avenge my loss. Just don't let Keith win again. I guess.
Again. So
win for the first time.
We gotta get things clear. Thanks a lot, man. I appreciate it, and hopefully next time you come on's on better circumstances.
Awesome. See you guys later.
Yep.
To greasy pizza, my friend.
Man, I am hungry, and that did not help. Moving into the second, like I said, Keith 32, Craig 31, Mike 30. Close as always. And we head back to the Bellator promotional banner and kind of refocus things back to MVP and Daly. Mike kind of previously alluded to it, a pretty solid game plan from Paul Daly, but to no avail. And Craig, I'll start with you. Going into this camp on kind of, not a whole lot of time, with May 11th being MVP's next date against Douglas Lima. If you were MVP and his team heading into this camp for Douglas Lima, what has got to be the number one focus?
Try not to lose. I think it's way too quick of a turnaround. What is it? May 11th, they announced today that's going to be the double billing with Patricio and Michael Chandler. I mean, you look at Douglas Lima, he's a guy that realistically he's had, 5 fights in the last few years. The one knock on him is that decision loss to Rory McDonald, and then he just tore through Koreshkov in his last one. And I was picking Koreshkov to win that fight. I didn't see Lima getting it done. But, man, the guy's got everything. I think he could be a stud in the UFC. I think he'd be a top 10 type of guy, maybe even a top 5 at 170. And for MVP, I've been a doubter for a long time. I mean, he's kind of a guy that's kind of crushed some soup cans early on in his career. You look at him fighting, regional guys that they kind of threw in on notice, and he just doesn't have a complete game. So if he can do anything, maybe work on his grappling, but it's too short of a timetable for him, and he's not going to be able to get the win over Lima.
Mike.
How do I even follow that? I don't think it's too quick of a turnaround. I mean, this will only be a second fight in a full calendar year. I mean, the David Rickles fight was in May of 2018. He had a lot of time off to prepare for this fight. He certainly didn't take a lot of damage. So actually the fight he was preparing for with Paul Daly is the fight he's actually going to get on May 11th. Now, Douglas Lima is no joke. In fact, Keith and I had this conversation, and Nolan had this conversation on Friday night at Mohegan Sun covering Bellator. I think Lima's the favorite to win this whole thing. I really do. I think he's the guy to win it. And if Michael Venom Page is who he thinks he is, and who a lot of people think, believe he can be, if he can go out and beat a Lima, he goes from, can this guy be the guy to, I think this guy can be the guy. It makes things really interesting. I think this is such a good matchup. I think Lima's the guy to beat in this entire Grand Prix. And, I kind of like the respect factor. It's 2 different fights. The Daly MVP fight was built on hatred and a big grudge match. This is 2 guys who could beat the shit out of each other, who have a lot of respect for each other at the same time. So I like the card. I like the matchmaking. I don't think it's too long away because, again, before this last fight, he fought David Rickles in May of last year. So I don't have a problem with that. I don't think it's too quick of a turnaround. And let's go. I love this fight. I love Lima MVP. Let's do it.
Keith.
So the question, I'm going to answer the question. The question was, what does he have to do to improve? A lot of people will say, well, he's going to go work on his wrestling. Well, he's got 3 months to work on his wrestling. He just got out-wrestled by Paul Daly, who's been kind of the consensus worst, elite level fighter, the worst wrestler in the last 20 years. And he made him look like Cael Sanderson on Saturday night. So you're not going to learn how to be a good wrestler in 3 months. What he's got to do is he's got to keep the distance. That's what he's going to have to try to stay away, work on keeping the distance. And then he's got to hope that Lima doesn't go for a takedown. And honestly, of the guys who's left in the tournament, I mean, you got Naaman Gracie, you got John Fitch, you got Rory McDonald, and Douglas Lima. Of those 4 options, this is actually probably the best stylistic matchup because Lima's not a wrestler. And it's funny because how many people talk about Lima's grappling. He's not a grappler. I mean, Rory McDonald is. Rory McDonald, he out-wrestled Paul Bailey. He out-wrestled Lima. You know, that was actually the knock on Lima is that he lost to Rory McDonald because of the wrestling. John Fitch, obviously, he's an All-American wrestler. And Naaman Gracie, if he gets to the ground, he's going to submit him. So, stylistically, this is probably Michael Page's best matchup. So what he's got to do is he's got to keep the distance. He's got to flash. He's got to hope it turns into a striking battle. And if it turns into a striking battle, he could still beat Lima in this matchup. And then he's got to somehow make it to the finals and pray that a miracle the rest of the guys doesn't shoot him for a takedown on him.
All right. Very good stuff, guys. Once again, unfortunately, there will not be a short notice beneficiary here. Keith 40, Craig 38, Mike 37. Valiant effort, though, my friend. And kind of unfair circumstances. We always appreciate you coming on, though, even though you already have a version of the belt. Anything you want to say before we say goodbye?
You know, I'm just happy to be here. You know, I saw Keith's message on his post on Facebook, and I had a feeling it was going to be for Around the Cage, and I was happy to do it. So, you know, the fact that I beat Nolan is pretty impressive to me. I thought I'd be halfway to La La Land at this point. So, good luck, fellas. I mean, it was an honor to be surrounded by this panel, even you, Keith, and your 2 beautiful eyes. Thanks for having me, as always. See you later.
Thank you, man. Appreciate it. And for those that are confused, listening, wondering what this is, Keith's eyes did make an appearance right behind the curtain of one big baby Jarrell Miller this weekend. You can see him kind of peeking over.
It actually happened twice. It happened the night before with Minikoff, and it was even better. What happened is both these guys, they're trying to take video of me, and both these big meatheads keep jumping in the way. It's like,
yeah, dude.
Come on, man. Bellator, move these guys.
You got to ask them who they think they are, right?
Yeah, man.
Congratulations to you 2 getting it down to the final round. We push forward with a final question that I believe both of you did receive, just due to the fact that we had a little bit of rearrangement. We'll go ahead and ask it. We already previously alluded to the Sergey Kharitonov and Matt Mitrione fight ending in a less than desirable way. So, Craig, I will go ahead and start with you. If you were Sergey Kharitonov, would you have any apprehension or any kind of shyness in rebooking a fight with Matt Mitrione if they were to go down that road in the future?
I'd be afraid to fight ever again. I mean, you saw how hard he got kicked in the nuts. Like, it hurts to get kicked in the nuts, but when a meathead is kicking you in the nuts, it hurts even worse. And when you have a hemorrhoid, but then you go out and take pictures with people, I mean, it still sucks. So good for him, for being a good sport. Now, this card coming up May 11th that we just answered, you've got Pitbull and Chandler. You've got the big MVP and Lima fight. Matt Mitrione said yesterday that he wanted to fight in Chicago, and if they could make a fight for him, he'd sell a lot of tickets. He'd bring a lot of people there. I don't know if Sergey Kharitonov would want to go into enemy territory like that, but I could see it. And I talked about it earlier about Kharitonov when he fought Anton Viazigin in M1, and it was kind of an eye rake. And if you go back and watch the replay, it hardly even touched his eye. It looked like a bit of a work to me, and I'm not one of those conspiracy guys, but it didn't look good to me. He said he would, accept another fight against Viazigin. It never really materialized. He ended up in Bellator, won his next fight over Nelson, and now we're here. So realistically, no. I mean, Matt Mitrione's a guy that's not going to want to intentionally hurt somebody. We saw what happened with him and Travis Brown and how hard he got hit in the eye twice, which ended the fight. So it's not like he's a bad guy. He definitely didn't mean to do it. And I think you need to have a fight to try and build up this heavyweight division again, because how long is Cro Cop going to be around? How long is Roy Nelson going to be around? We're wondering about Congo and Ryan Bader. I think a fight between Mitrione and Kharitonov, maybe a true winner. That's your next title shot after the Congo Bader fight, if that happens. So yeah, hopefully it materializes a rematch between these guys, and we can kind of put everything in the past.
Keith.
All right, so I'm going to try to make this in 15 seconds because that's as long as that fight was. All right, I'm not really gonna do that. I was just kind of having fun there. I would say yes. I'd be terrified to fight Matt Mitrione after I just got kicked nuts. It was so bad. He went to the hospital. It was so bad that he went to the hospital again the next day. Like he got released the next day. This is 100%. I'm not trying to name drop. I was sitting in the lobby and saw him come through the lobby of the casino. It's a big, massive casino. So I might have been the first person to see Harry Tonov. I ran up to him. I asked him how his nuts was. Asked if I could take a picture for the website. He wouldn't let me. It's too bad. I talked to Mitrione. He was very apologetic. He spoke I spoke to him at the press event, and I'm not trying to be like, oh, I did that, I did this, but I asked him. I said, hey, would you in the future be gun shy to throw the inside kick because you kicked him nuts? And he said no. He was adamant. He's like, no, it's one of my best strikes. If anything, he actually thinks that kicking Harry Tonov in the nuts is an advantage for him because of the fact that Harry Tonov was sitting on his back leg trying to get Mitrione to overextend. So now he said, hey, he might be wary of doing that now. So but the one thing I want to throw my man Craig, he's a brilliant man, but he's way off. He said that Harry Tonov would be going to enemy territory. There is 3.13 million Russians in Chicago. I actually think he'd be a favorite. Mitrione would be coming in from Indiana. That's still a long drive. 3.3 million Russian Chicago is no different than when they come to Brooklyn. The Russians come out. They'll be there. Harry Tonov would actually be the crowd favorite.
I must say, this is one of the closer final showdowns I've ever had in my life of holding this show. But the deciding factor has to go into the fact that I was in attendance for Bellator 198 when Fedor beat Mir, and I can confirm Keith's point that the Russians do come out. Therefore, Mr. Keith Schilling is tonight's winner.
Thank you.
Man, that was close, though. That was very, very close. That was very, very tough.
You know what? I'll tell you this. So
Yeah.
Connecticut, it's about a 10-hour drive, 10.5-hour drive from me. And if I did not have to work and didn't start a new job, I would have been down there too. But I'll tell you one thing, and if Scott Coker is listening, because I know it's coming down the pipe, Scott, bring Bellator to Canada, man. You've got two Canadian champions, both from British Columbia, which is way further away. But bring it to Fredericton, New Brunswick. I mean, get 5,000 people into the Aiken Center. Pack it.
You know what? No, if you're gonna come to New Brunswick, you got to go to Heartland, New Brunswick, which has the look this up for anybody listening, has the world's longest covered bridge. And I know this because my wife was born and raised in the beautiful Heartland, New Brunswick.
Guys, thank you very much for coming on tonight. And Keith, I know being the beneficiary of the winner's circle, I give you a chance to say whatever you would like to. The floor is yours if you choose to take it.
Yeah, thank you. So one thing I want to point out, this happened this weekend, was Lindsey Van Zandt won an atomweight title, and Scott Coker was asked about it. And the thing about Bellator is they always kind of they kind of look as the JV, MMA league for a major league behind. So they have to do things to separate themselves. And there's a whole slew of talented young ladies. Most of them are going to be very attractive because they're, the smallest weight classes. Be the major organization other than Invicta and One to add an atomweight division. So I think that's the avenue that Coker and them should go. You have a star, Lindsey Van Zandt. So check it out.
Yep, and she and there was a short notice that she was the one originally in that fight. I think Watkins filled in for
she was supposed to go against Messier Blanca.
Yep.
Who's really good. That would have been that honestly could be the first fight for the title. Like that girl, the girl's that good. She was a former IBJJF champion in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and a Golden Gloves champion. So that'd be a fantastic first, inaugural title fight.
I'm with you all the way. I think a 105-pound division makes a lot of sense for them. But guys, we must save that conversation for another day and say goodbye to those listening. For those listening, these videos are now available on my personal YouTube channel, and as well as everywhere else, iTunes, Spotify, everywhere else under the sun. We will be back next week. I think that we'll have a little bit better of a grip on a panel next week. And until then, so long.